I'm sorry, people. I know you didn't really want to sit around and watch me load a computer program. How do I get your desktop? I'll have to shrink it down.
And you're back.
User data desktop SBS student talk. And it's double slash. I'm still trying to load this, don't worry. You didn't.
User data might have to be capitalized. Just the U in it.
User data desktop SBS student. What I call it?
Student talk, I think.
It's at the top.
Yeah. And then the double slash before SBS.
Thank you. All right, watch this. Okay, I think that's right. Hey, it loaded. All right, so let me find it now. All right, so this is a brain. And I'm going to load a couple of nodes to orient myself. There's a couple of brain nodes that I'm very interested in called the default mode network. And what I've done is just loaded them, made them, I've not loaded them, I've highlighted them. I've made them bigger. There we can zoom in on it. And so those red squares happen to be these default mode network nodes. And then what I can do now is initialize it with any given state, right? I mean, I could do whatever I wanted, but we have it set up where you can randomly turn on some number of nodes. So, or actually, I'll just turn on the default mode network. And then I will, if I can make this work, let me shrink this up. There we go. So now I've turned them on. Yellow is on, red is off. And then based on what I'm going to do here, turns out to be Wolfram's Rule 110. So just like I talked about Rule 110, every node is going to say, am I on? And then it's going to say, is some percentage of my positive neighbors on? Is some percentage of my negative neighbors on? And that percentage is set up right here in this example. And then you can tell it, okay, run. And that shows the activity of the different nodes, and you can see them flashing around. And the cool thing is, so now these things are basically computing. What? I have absolutely no idea what they're computing. I told Satoru, one of the guys I work with yesterday, look, it's happy. He said, how do you know? And I said, it told me so. But so you can get a lot of different cool patterns of activity. In this case, if you look at it, it's got a pretty cool period. I don't know what the period is, but it's a period of like 7 or 8 that it's cycling. I can reload this. So you can see it's not just random. That actually turns out to be a period of I don't know how many. But depending on these different thresholds and different rules, you can get very different behaviors. And so if I can bring this back up. And so what we're interested in is we know under certain states, certain brain regions should be processing certain information and certain other brain regions shouldn't, right? And so the goal is, given a given state, which is defined by the network connectivity, what rules and what thresholds do you use to get a certain output? And ultimately, one could start computing things. So that's my cool demo. And I just have one more slide to tell you sort of where we're going with that. That's all Karen's work. I didn't do it. She gets all the credit for that because I just asked her, please make it work. So basically, this is where we're going. So genetic algorithms are very new to me. I'm just learning about them. I don't know if any of you know about genetic algorithms, but basically what they are is they're sort of computer code that is self-writing. So what we're going to do is basically take all of our binary numbers, right? Our inputs for Wolfram's rules, binary numbers to represent our threshold from 0 to 100 can be represented as a binary number. So you have a string of, in our case, I think there'll be 40 binary numbers, okay? And you randomly fill those out with, say, 400 different combinations, all right? And then you run this algorithm. We have a known output that we want. We run the algorithm on 400 different outputs, or 400 different genetic codes, as they call it, or individuals. And you run them many times, and you calculate the fitness. How close does it match what you expect the output? You choose the top performers. You cross that code. You can randomly cross it, or you can choose a cutoff point and cross it. And you make offspring. And you make 200 offspring, and then, or 400, and you run it again. And you do this for thousands of generations. And basically what happens is it ultimately will find a really good solution to all of these variables which we don't know what to set them at. And it does it in a very interesting way that it may not be explainable why it solved the problem. Like, why is that genetic code the best? But it can consistently produce the best behavior. Then we can take that genetic code and test it in different situations or different conditions, or compare genetic codes across populations. Do older adults exhibit a different genetic code than younger adults, and that type of thing? So that's one place we're going. Multi-state models is basically looking at multiple different cognitive states, and we'll combine that with sort of our genetic code. Simulated lesions. We know that as we get old, we lose certain parts of our brain, and so we can take this model. If we can build a genetic code that produces the output we expect, we can go in and pluck out nodes and see how that then affects the behavior of the system. We can generate models that can actually compute. So one of the things we were talking about doing that's actually relatively simple to do, whether or not we'll solve the problem or not, is you can input signal into this anywhere you want. You saw I have all those nodes, right? I can turn any one of those nodes on at any point in time. So we could consistently feed it visual information by turning on visual cortex. And we could tell it to decide, was it getting something in its upper or lower visual field based on where we put the signal, right? And then you basically run your genetic algorithm and have the brain push a button by turning on its right or left motor cortex. And so it can actually compute and make a decision. Was I seeing something up here, or was I seeing something down here? And then lastly, one of the things I'm really interested in is moving this on to patients, and how can we use this to better understand disease, to predict disease, to make prognoses. I mean, that's all pie in the sky, way, way, way down the road, but that's ultimately where I'd like to take some of this. And I think that's it. My lab, the lab I work with, there's like 12 of us, is awesome. It's called the Laboratory for Complex Brain Networks, and everybody contributes. I'm just here talking to everyone, helps do all this stuff. It's a really great lab, and our funding helped pay for a lot of this. And I think that's it. My small world is having nerdy small world joke. So that's all I got, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. No questions? All right. Thanks. I hope you do small world stuff. We'll help. I'm happy to help.